All right, let's discuss with Illinois Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Is a perjury trap a concern in this particular matter? Is that normal to you?
Well, I think anyone testifying sworn testimony, as this would certainly be, you can't lie to the Justice Department, the FBI, or Congress. That would raise concerns for the president's attorney in any case.
The White House, the ex-White House chief strategist, Steve Bannon, appeared before your committee yesterday. He was expected to return today, but for some reason he didn't. Let me first get a couple of questions, including this one. Axios reported that Bannon did say he spoke with other senior White House staffers about that very controversial June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Russians. First of all, did Bannon say that?
Well, what Bannon said was he had talked to other people about those events and times. Obviously, it was in the book. So apparently, he's referencing a non-existent privilege, but he can talk to anybody but Congress about those events.
Is he going to be speaking? I know he's going to be answering all of the questions from Robert Mueller, the chief, the special counsel. When he comes back, will he be willing to answer all of your questions?
I think he absolutely has to. Let's remember what happened this week. He refused to answer questions. And because the Republicans, he's out of favor with the Republicans, they whip up a subpoena real quick. He still refuses to answer those questions. I'm sure when he comes back, he'll be under subpoena again. We'll see if the majority is willing to press the case and make him answer these questions, as he has to under the law under subpoena.
Here's something that's unusual. I'm sure was noticed by you and your colleagues as well. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Dearborn, he appeared before your committee. He answered all of the committee's questions. So the White House won't let Bannon and former campaign manager Corey Lewandowski do the same thing that Rick Dearborn did. How do you explain that?
The only thing you can explain here, the only way to explain it, if you use your common sense, is they have more terrible things to say about what took place. The White House is more concerned about what certain people have to say. So obviously they know him for more information that would be damaging to the White House's case. What's frustrating here, and we just pointed it out, is there were other witnesses who have refused to answer critical questions, right? Mr. Sessions, Trump Jr., Eric Prince, all questions essential to know exactly what took place. The majority was unwilling to snap up that subpoena like they did with Mr. Bannon. As I said yesterday, apparently only Steve Bannon can unite that committee.
Well, what about Corey Lewandowski, the former Trump campaign manager? He refused to answer your questions as well, and yet you did not issue a subpoena to him. Why?
The only answer they gave back was the fact that he would be willing to come back and answer all questions. Here's where it gets complicated, though. He appears on another network the day before and announces he's going to answer every question. Then he appears before our committee and says, well, I'm only prepared to answer up through the time I left the campaign. Obviously, something took place in the meantime. I think it's a fair bet to say that there was a gag order directly from the White House.
In that book, Fire and Fury, Bannon said that he suspected at the heart of this investigation wasn't just necessarily collusion or obstruction of justice, but money laundering. Did you get into that with him yesterday?
Unfortunately, a lot of those issues weren't able to be brought up because he stopped answering questions. And again, that's why he has to come forward. It's odd that it comes from Mr. Bannon, but I think he's absolutely right. And the problem is our committee has barely scratched the surface on the issue of money laundering. Let's put it all together. The Mueller committee, the Mueller investigation has slapped a subpoena on Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank was recently fined about $630 million for their role in money laundering with Russia, a $10 billion money laundering scheme that the Russians partake in. So obviously it's a major concern. We have to understand that two of the indictments that took place so far involving Mr. Manafort and Mr. Gates involved money laundering in that same neck of the woods. So idly saying this, Mr. Bannon is right, and it should be a focus of our investigation, as it already is with the Mueller investigation.
I know there were some tensions in your committee, the House Intelligence Committee, between Democrats and Republicans. Have you resolved those, or are they still very evident?
Yeah, it's a bad day to ask. I'd like to think that my Republican friends understand that this should be just as important to them as it is to us. Former CIA Director Mike Mueller called what the Russians did the political equivalent of 9/11. It is very easy to imagine a scenario in which the Russians would attack Republicans in a campaign, as they did Democrats this time. We also have to remember that they hacked into over 36 states' boards of election. Our very democratic process is at stake. It's time for a bipartisan effort to get to these answers, find a way to make sure it never happens again.
Congressman Quigley, thanks so much for joining us.